Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays, hosted by someone's favorite film buff, Nathan. I love movies and I want to share that with you. From old originals to cult classics and foreign favorites, along with straight up drivel, WWW is your place for all things movies. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Wednesdays, the show where we talk about 3 movies all in the same night. And for tonight's episode, we're going to be doing something normal that everybody's heard of, because for the past 2 to 3 weeks, I've been talking about random foreign trilogies of movies that not everybody has heard of before. So I figured to kind of refresh everybody and get some people back on track, we're going to watch and talk about 3 movies that everybody's heard of. As such, I decided to talk about the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy tonight, because everybody knows what the Pirates of the Caribbean movies are, and we all know about it so much that I'm going to give a quick disclaimer. For the remainder of this episode, I'm not going to say Pirates of the Caribbean, insert whatever movie subtitle here, when I'm talking about these movies for every single time, because that would just really destroy my voice saying the long titles over and over again, and I don't like saying it over and over again. Although, knowing me, I probably will say it over and over again. So let's just get into the watch list before we go to our first music break. First up is The Curse of the Black Pearl from 2002, followed up by Dead Man's Chest from 2006, and closing out with At World's End from 2007. And yes, all of those are preceded by Pirates of the Caribbean, etc., etc. I will say before we go to music break, this is one of the few times where I'm glad I'm not doing the weekend show. You know, the show that I would run on Saturdays from like 8 to 10 p.m., What to Watch Weekends, that I used to always plug at the very end of What to Watch Wednesdays episodes, Nearly forgot which show I was on here for a second. The point is, I'm glad I'm not doing it this quarter, because that would require me needing to watch On Stranger Tides, and that would have ruined what was a perfectly good trilogy. And we'll get into why it's a perfectly good trilogy after the music break with the first movie, so stick around for that. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our first movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl from 2003, available to watch now on Disney+. For the basic plot summary of The Curse of the Black Pearl, again, I'm avoiding saying Pirates of the Caribbean before every single friggin' title, we follow Will Turner as he must team up with the pirate Jack Sparrow to save his childhood friend Elizabeth Swan from Hector Barbossa, captain of the Black Pearl. And I want to apologize to Mr. Jack Sparrow for not calling him Captain Jack Sparrow, but you know, he only corrects people like 40 different times over the course of these movies, and he only insists on always being called Captain Jack, so apologies there to that non-real character. I could have said fictional, but I said non-real because that's a real word. Anyways, so everything I just explained sounds a bit convoluted to people who have never seen Pirates of the Caribbean before or are not familiar with these movies at all. The thing is that most people are familiar with Pirates of the Caribbean, and most people are familiar with this plot. So, in traditional What to Watch Wednesdays fashion, I have to kind of force myself to say new things about this movie because everybody's heard of it, everybody knows what it is, everybody knows that it's the funny pirate movie with Johnny Depp in it. And I can't just talk about the fact that it's the funny pirate movie with Johnny Depp for the entire time, because that's nothing new. So, let's start off with a banger of a new statement. Here's the thing, I know I say this a lot on What to Watch Wednesdays, but I'm going to reiterate it with Pirates of the Caribbean especially. I forgot this movie was good. Here's the thing. I say that a lot. I forget how good a movie is, and I rewatch it for What to Watch Wednesdays, and I'm like, man, I forgot how good this was. No, apparently my brain kind of skipped over a bit, and it forgot that this movie was good to begin with. Here's what usually happens with me and Pirates of the Caribbean. Over the course of the last 5 years or so, ever since I first watched these back in senior year of high school, I would get kind of annoyed when people would bring up the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise because I'd seen all of them and they really start to drop off in quality near the 4th and 5th movie. And I would just kind of take my interpretations of the fourth and fifth movie and apply it to the entire franchise, including the first one, and say, oh yeah, the franchise is kind of dwindled in quality. They're not all that good once you get to the later ones. But I would at least give people the props of, yes, the first movie is good. I would say that, but I don't think my brain truly believed it until I rewatched it recently and went, hang on a second, was I just saying that because I was trying to be nice to those people and get them off my back so I couldn't exactly bash the first movie? And I was just saying that for no good reason because I forgot that the first movie was actually good? I think I was. I think that's my big dilemma. The first movie, for everything the series would eventually become, is fantastic. Everything about The Curse of the Black Pearl is honestly really fun. And I mean, I can't remember all of the things that I thought were good on my first watch through, but I can remember all the things I thought were good on the second watch through. First of all, I thought that all of the character dynamics were really good, and I liked how they shifted. I liked how they changed. I liked all of the dynamics between nearly all the main characters. Everyone I mentioned in that plot summary, there's a change at some point with nearly all of them, and I really like those changes. I think all of them were justified. I think all of them worked, and it doesn't really go any further than that. For a movie that has iconic characters at this point, you'd think I would stop being surprised by the fact that they have good character writing and good character dynamics. But apparently my brain just doesn't work sometimes and thought, oh yeah, the characters aren't that memorable or something like that. I don't know what was going through my head to just say that it was good and then forget that it was good. This never happens to me. Usually I just forget how good a movie is, but I still think it's good and remember it being good. The first movie, apparently I forgot that it was good. It's given me a headache just thinking about it. But we're going to push through the headache and talk about some other things that are good about this movie. First of all, I did not remember how many and how good the stunts were in this movie. I forgot that there were a lot of comedic beats related to stunts, such as jumping up or, falling through the floor, things like that. Maybe not falling through the floor directly, but, stunt work in this movie is actually really good, and it adds to the slapstick sort of pulpy adventure feel that the movie's trying to capture, and it really enhances that feel. Alongside that, you have really good CGI that has mostly held up despite being from 2003. And I will say, you could say that some of it hasn't held up, but for the most part, it's really there in full force. I was honestly surprised to find any of it looking half as good as it did. And that's a really good compliment for a movie from 2003. I will also say, when it comes to the overall pacing of the movie and the way those stunts kind of add to that adventure movie feel, here's the thing about Pirates of the Caribbean, the original at least. It is still pretty long. I think it's over 2.5 hours. I can't count. But, for being so long and for being kind of almost an epic in terms of scale and proportion, whatever that word means, proportion, I was surprised to see how fast-paced it was and how silly it was. It was basically, I describe it as nearly a 3-hour-long epic movie paced like an action comedy. And because of that, you're not really bored throughout that entire runtime, which is not impossible to do, but it's a commendable feat for sure when you're able to do that in any movie that's pretty long. So it does have that going for it. Another big thing it has going for it is something we all know by this point, which is the cast. I mean, of course, we have Johnny Depp playing Jack Sparrow. Everybody knows and loves Jack Sparrow. But we also have Will Turner, played by Orlando Bloom. We have Elizabeth Swann, who's played by Keira Knightley. And we have Hector Barbosa, played by Geoffrey Rush. And those three especially do really good jobs on their own, not being overshadowed by Johnny Depp, to be honest. They manage to hold their own when they're not directly in competition with Johnny Depp. Now, of course, nobody can directly compete with Johnny Depp in this movie. People watch this movie because it has Jack Sparrow in it. I will fully admit to still liking the movie, mostly because of Jack Sparrow. But At the very least, Will Turner, played by Orlando Bloom, has a more complete character arc. And here's the most important thing about The Curse of the Black Pearl, and it's the thing I think the later movies really get wrong. This movie has a main character, and that main character is not Jack Sparrow. The main character of this movie is Will Turner. Will Turner goes through the arc, he goes through the changes, he faces adversity, in conjunction with Jack Sparrow as sort of his sidekick. Now, of course, Jack Sparrow does his own stuff, and he advances the plot and the story, but he doesn't really have an arc. His status does change by the end, and I won't say how, because spoilers, but, you know, him as a person, he doesn't grow or change or learn really much of anything. Will, on the other hand, changes his entire perspective as a person over the course of the movie. And that's something that I kind of forgot about. It's not like perfectly done. It's not an amazing arc, but it's an arc nonetheless, and it totally functions. And that kind of goes for the rest of the movie. If I was able to sum up my major thoughts surrounding this movie, I don't think the movie is all that deep. Haha, that's a reference to the fact that it takes place on the ocean and the ocean is deep. Haha, ocean joke. The movie's not that deep from a story perspective. It's not exactly the most mind-blowing, psychological thing. It's not going to change your life. But it does have really good setup and payoff for nearly all the jokes and plot points. And the only thing that doesn't have setup is Jack being chaotic and doing whatever he wants, and Johnny Depp improvising whatever he improvised over the course of this movie. But those things don't need setup. It's Jack Sparrow. You can't really nail him down. He's doing whatever he wants, and that's what's amazing about that character. As long as the rest of the movie is well set up and well paced and has setup and payoff, you're fine. And the movie manages that really well. So for that reason, it's still fun, enjoyable, and entertaining, even when Jack Sparrow isn't on screen. Of course, when it comes to the second movie, they didn't really capture that perfectly. So we're going to go to a music break, and when we come back, we'll jump into the next movie. So stick around for that. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our second movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest from 2006, available to watch now on Disney+. For the basic plot summary of Dead Man's Chest, we follow Jack Sparrow, Will Turner, and Elizabeth Swan, Swan. Almost forgot that was her last name because it's the name of a bird too. Anyways, so Jack Sparrow, Will Turner, and Elizabeth Swan must find the treasure chest that contains the heart of Davy Jones while being pursued by Davy Jones himself. Or at least that's a simplified version of the plot summary for Dead Man's Chest, if I'm being completely honest. I had to keep it simple for the sake of clarity, because yes, everybody's heard of the first Pirates of the Caribbean, and we all know that there's a couple sequels, and we all know that this movie exists. But here's the thing. When it comes to summarizing the plot, I have issues, and that bleeds over into being issues with the plot itself, rather than just summarizing it. So let's tackle this, okay? So I said in that summary that they need to find the chest that contains the heart of Davy Jones. Here's the thing. That's the overall goal. There's actually like 3 or 4 other MacGuffins involved in this movie, and keep in mind, MacGuffin is like object you need to find to make the plot move forward. And there's like 3 or 4 or 5 of those. I can't even keep track of how many there are. There's too many of them in this movie overall. But in the first half, at the very least, I'm going to list off the ones that I remember, because I lost track eventually. But I remember these 5 for sure. There is the key that opens the chest that has Davy Jones's heart. They need to find the key. They also need to find the chest itself that has the heart to Davy Jones. And when they're going to find the chest, they then learn that it has the heart of Davy Jones in it itself, which in and of itself will be an entire other plot device later down the line. They also need to find Jack's compass. Now, you may be asking, what do you mean they need to find it? It's Jack's compass. Doesn't he have it? Good question. By that, I mean Will Turner needs to get Jack's compass. So all of a sudden, that becomes a MacGuffin as well. And they also have papers that are given to them by the British. And by they, I mean, again, Will and Elizabeth to a certain extent. They have these papers and documents that allow them to be freed from being imprisoned or something like that, that at a certain point a different character wants to get a hold of. So that's like 5. There's like a couple others. The more I keep looking at this movie, the more MacGuffins I keep seeing, and the more it frustrates me, because here's the point of a MacGuffin. You're supposed to only have one of them. Like, okay, classic example. Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Adoy. That's the only MacGuffin you need for that movie. That's the only thing driving the plot forward. They're going to go find the Ark of the Covenant. You know, the Holy Grail in The Last Crusade. Go find the Holy Grail. I know I mentioned Indiana Jones, but I mean, obvious thing, Death Star plans in the original Star Wars. You notice the big theme with these classic movies with MacGuffins in them? There's only one in each. And in this movie, there's like 5 that I just mentioned. And here's the thing. When you need to go find the key to the chest, and you need to find the chest itself, and then the chest itself contains a certain object, and in order to find all of those things, you need to find Jack's compass. And then at some point, you also have the papers as a motivation to free everybody. All of that combined may work itself out to being a story, but the fact is that it creates this really thick layer of, I don't care about these things individually. I want to see them all united. And right now we're at a state in this movie where you don't have everything and you're trying to find them one at a time. So it's going to feel like you're wasting my time just a little bit. That's my big issue. And I think it's a very valid one. There's also another issue with this movie. Well, there's a few other issues with this movie, but another kind of major issue is associated with one of those MacGuffins. No, 2 of those MacGuffins. I can't keep track, and it's ridiculous. But here's the point. Our main villain for this movie, I mentioned, was Davy Jones. Now, technically speaking, the, what's his name? Lord Cutter, I think, is his name. If that's not his name, don't correct me. I don't care. The villain in this movie is this British general guy, military person, who basically throws Elizabeth and Will in prison and wants to go get Jack Sparrow and Davy Jones or something like that. And the reason I sound like I don't care is because I don't care. He was introduced with a lot of ceremony and he was hyped up to be a very intimidating villain. And then for the rest of the movie, he's just British and just says generic stuff. And he loses all presence as a villain almost immediately. I will say Davy Jones gains a lot of presence as the movie goes on, but unfortunately they don't hold on to that forever. We'll get to that later. I will say that because there's so many MacGuffins, at the very least you'd hope that this movie moves pretty fast, like the first movie, and kind of ignores the fact that it doesn't have the strongest plot and just kind of trucks forward. And I will admit, this movie does pull that off. It moves pretty fast, although at the beginning it tends to jump around a little bit in terms of location and where we're actually going. Because again, we can't nail down which thing we're supposed to be looking for. Are we looking for the key or the chest yet? I'm never going to get over how many MacGuffins there are in this movie, so I'm just going to try and push through my rambling on that aspect specifically before I get too deep into my rants. But at the very least, it still moves fast and pushes forward. It has some high points here and there, especially the scene that's set in the village. I will admit, that scene was really funny and a lot of fun. Pretty high point in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. But the biggest issue with this movie is something that was the biggest strength with the first movie. And that is the fact that Jack has become a main character. And I know he was a main character before. What I mean is, he is the main character. Keep in mind, everything is now revolving around Jack and his compass to find the key, to find the chest, to make sure we have the heart, and there's also the papers to motivate Will to go find Jack. So Jack becomes the focus. And that's kind of an issue when you have Jack Sparrow in this movie, because Jack Sparrow is technically the comedic relief character. I know he's not fully the comedic relief character, but I always treat him like the comedic relief because he's funny and he doesn't change. And there's at least 3 other characters in this movie alone that fit that description as well as Jack, that aren't just Jack Sparrow. So the problem is that when you take the comedic relief character and make him the focus, it's kind of like Jurassic Park 2, where you focus on Ian Malcolm, and all of a sudden it becomes this really weird moment of what are we supposed to be doing here? Because I don't think the tone is matching up with what the first movie established, wherein we have actual character arcs for everybody else. So now we're kind of stagnant because our main character is the one who didn't change in the first movie. So what's the likelihood that he's going to change now? And I say he because in both cases it's a dude. It's both Ian Malcolm and Jack Sparrow, in this case specifically. So we're kind of left with this weird middle ground wherein it feels like we don't go anywhere, and the way it ends out feels like we didn't accomplish anything. And that especially applies to Dead Man's Chest. Let me tell you, it is the weakest ending out of the 3, for sure, at least in my opinion. But I feel pretty strongly about that opinion. It's the weakest ending. But in terms of weak endings, there is a movie in the series that doesn't have one, and that'll be the next movie on our watch list, which will be the 3rd movie. So stick around after the music break when I talk about that. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our 3rd movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End from 2007, available to watch now on Disney+. For the basic plot summary of At World's End, we follow the entire crew of the Black Pearl, which is basically all the main characters from the last 2 movies, as they must reunite and travel to Davy Jones's locker to rescue Jack Sparrow so that they can convene the Brethren Court and bring together all of pirate kind to make one final stand against the British. So, that's the basic plot summary out of the way. Now, before we go any further, we need to address a very valid question. And I'm trying to maintain my composure because I could go berserk at asking this question, and I don't want to really ruin anybody's hearing by yelling. So instead, I'm going to ask this very moderately. In that plot summary, I mentioned that we're convening the Brethren Court. Simple question. The what? The who? The what now? What is that? I know that was more than one question, but that doesn't matter. I can't count anyways. So, let me ask again. What is the Brethren Court? It has not been mentioned in either Curse of the Black Pearl or Dead Man's Chest. And I was even looking this up, going, what's the Brethren Court? Why wasn't it mentioned in the other 2 movies? As it turns out, it was kind of mentioned in the first movie when it came to this running joke surrounding the Pirates' Code. Now, see, the thing is, that doesn't count because there was a running joke in the movie about how the Pirates' Code doesn't apply and how, because they're pirates and, you know, they commit piracy in the literal sense, not in the online sense, in the literal sense. The Pirates' Code, a code of honor and respect and, I don't know, maintaining good health or something, is more a series of guidelines rather than an actual rule book that they follow. So that doesn't count as being established. So again, I ask, who is the Brotherhood or the Brethren Court? The Brethren Court is actually such a stupid name, and I could rant about why that's a stupid name, because all I want to say is the Brotherhood, but I can't even get into that right now. All I can do is boggle at the mind of why did they introduce this thing into the movie when it wasn't in the other 2? This doesn't feel like something that you put in the 3rd movie in a trilogy. This feels like something that should have been hyped up from the beginning, and now you're just throwing it in there. I don't even remember this being thrown in there until rewatching this, and I just realized, wow, I remember certain things surrounding it, but I don't remember it being called the Brethren Court. I don't remember why it was here. I don't remember anything about this. And it feels like the movie doesn't remember it either because it wasn't in the other two. And it doesn't remember to explain anything about it. If anything, it kind of avoids explaining it, like you're already supposed to know it. And I don't know it. I think I've made that pretty clear. So, we're going to move on to another problem with this movie. Yet again, MacGuffins. Oh, how we have still continued to have MacGuffins in these movies. So here's the problem. This movie has a MacGuffin related to the Brethren Court. And these MacGuffins are called the 9 Pieces of 8. And you know how I said I can't count? I thought I had problems counting. 9 pieces of 8, that's not mathematically possible. What do you mean there are 9 pieces of 8? Can we count or not? Can we not do this? What do these things have to do with anything? They haven't been mentioned in the other 2 movies. Just like the Brethren Court, they're thrown in for the sake of it. And speaking of things that are thrown in for the sake of it, we have the sea goddess Calypso that gets brought up as well. And whatever that turns into is associated with spoilers, so I'm not going to get into it, but that's also brought up. Here's a bunch of plot points that are pretty big in this movie that have not been established from the beginning. Great. I love it when this happens in any movie franchise ever. We should not do this. This is terrible. Please stop doing this, guys. I know that it's Pirates of the Caribbean. I know it's based on an amusement park ride. I know that there's not supposed to be a very deep plot, but could you maybe try and establish the things that you're going to have in the 3rd movie by the 1st movie? Could you maybe try that? At least a little bit. At least a little bit. For something that's not a stupid joke of, it's more of a series of guidelines. Well, then maybe don't have it be important later in the 3rd movie, okay? Okay. So, now that I've gotten that out of my system, let's acknowledge some other things about this movie. So, At World's End is definitely the longest of the 3, or at least I think it's the longest of the 3. I didn't fact check it. Apologies for that. But it is 2 hours and 45 minutes long. I know that for sure. And it is for sure the biggest slog out of the 3 movies. That first hour and 48 minutes, I'm constantly asking these questions of, what is the Brethren Court? Why do we have 9 pieces of 8? Why does this matter? What is going on? It's definitely the biggest slog to get through for those first hour and 48 minutes. And by the time I got to the hour and 48 minute mark, I checked the time bar on the movie, and I realized that I had an hour left. And let me tell you, when I saw that, all of the wind went out of my sails. Ha boat joke. Ha joke, wind out of the sails, boat joke, pirates. Ha. However, I had to persevere, and persevere I did. And let me tell you something I was pleasantly surprised by. The last hour of the movie is fine. It's actually pretty enjoyable. There's a lot of fun moments. It's got a big culminating fight that's a lot of fun. I found myself really enjoying the last hour for a lot of reasons that are, again, pretty big spoilers, but honestly, I was expecting not to like the last hour. And while it had its issues here and there, and some minor issues that just kind of added up to being a whole big what at the end anyways, I still enjoyed it. It was pretty fast-paced. It didn't leave a sour taste in my mouth. It kind of just ended the series. And I know that there's other movies after this 3rd movie. I know that they definitely went on and milked the franchise until it couldn't be made into anything more, and even then they're, I think, making a 6th movie. But, you know, I didn't want to watch On Stranger Tides. I didn't want to watch whatever the 5th movie is called. I don't even remember what the 5th movie is called. I forgot that the first movie was good. You think I'm going to remember what the name of the 5th movie is? No, I just remember not liking it. Here's the point. For everything I was expecting, I wasn't expecting to be pleasantly surprised with a nice little ending to the trilogy. And because of that, this is where I'm going to end What to Watch Wednesdays tonight, on a pleasant surprise. Thank you all for listening in to What to Watch Wednesdays tonight. I will be back next Wednesday from 8 to 9 p.m. here on 88.1 The Burg for another episode of What to Watch Wednesdays. If you want to follow along with What to Watch Wednesdays, follow along on Instagram and YouTube at What to Watch Wednesdays, all in word, no caps, no spaces. And I will be back next week telling you all what to watch. Good night, everybody.